You are now listening to the Vegan Stuff podcast with Caavakushi.
Hosting this podcast today are our two AI hosts, Sam and Kim. If you simply can't get enough of us, go to caavakushi.com and sign up for our vegan newsletter and get our free 7-day high-protein vegan meal plan. And we also have some good news. We will be releasing our first ever cookbook pretty soon, so stay tuned. Hey, don't forget to follow us on our socials too.
Have you ever been online, maybe scrolling through comments, and you see something, an anti-vegan comment, and it just feels a little off, like maybe a bit too coordinated or weirdly specific?
Oh, absolutely. It's that feeling you get when you realize you're not in a normal conversation. You've stumbled into something else, something that feels, well, manufactured. And that feeling is exactly what the sources you sent over confirm. It's not just in your head.
Right. And that's exactly what we're getting into today. We are going to pull back the curtain on these huge financially backed campaigns that are designed from the ground up to discredit veganism, plant-based diets, alternative proteins, all of it. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are diving deep into the sources that expose just how far the industrial meat and dairy propaganda machine really goes.
And our mission here is really to go beyond just, anecdotes. We're looking at actual evidence of a coordinated structure. The information we have shows that big meat and big dairy are doing it all. They're hiring expensive PR firms, they're funding university academics, they're placing these massive ads.
And they're even paying people low wages to sit in cubicles and just spread disinformation online all day.
Exactly. This isn't just, healthy skepticism or fair market competition. This is a deliberate multi-million-dollar campaign to protect profits.
It's a campaign against a movement that really is just about compassion and trying to do less harm, a movement that genuinely threatens their bottom line.
And what's so fascinating, or maybe disturbing, is how sophisticated it is. This is not a new playbook. Industrial agriculture is using the exact same strategies that the tobacco and fossil fuel industries used for decades.
What, like the 4Ds?
Precisely. Denial, distraction, delay, and deflection. They deny their own environmental impact, they distract you with culture war topics, they delay any meaningful policy change, and they deflect the blame onto, anyone else. It is, in every sense, a disinformation war.
And it's a war being fought on every level, from these, slick PR boardrooms all the way down to the social media comment sections.
And that's where we should start, down in the trenches.
Yes. Let's start right there with the online stuff, because that's where I think most of our listeners feel it. And the most, truly explosive source you sent was from that anonymous whistleblower on Reddit.
This is the one. For anyone who has ever argued with someone online and thought, am I arguing with a real person or a bot? This is your validation.
So this was a Reddit AMA and Ask Me Anything, and the title was just so blunt. I was paid to discredit veganism online.
Yep. And this person claimed they worked for a U.S. meat industry trade group for a full year. Their entire job was just to go on social media, Reddit, Twitter, you name it, find conversations about diet or climate, and just inject anti-vegan talking points.
It sounds kind of grim. What was the pay like for a job like that?
That's one of the most revealing parts. The source says they were paid $17 an hour, working at 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. shift. And the person posting, the OP, said flat out, it wasn't worth it.
$17 an hour? It's not a lot of money to sell your soul.
It's not. And it tells you a lot about the strategy. The OP said the company specifically targeted usually down on our luck people, people who were desperate for any kind of work. They'd even advertise the jobs with these vague titles like influence and marketing on LinkedIn.
So they're exploiting people's economic vulnerability to get them to push these lies.
That's the business model. Low wage, high stress work.
Yeah.
And they make you sign a strict NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, so the whole operation stays quiet. It keeps the cost of creating this massive volume of disinformation incredibly low.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. They weren't just arguing. They were creating fake people, fake identities to manipulate the conversation.
This was the core of the job. The OP confirmed that workers would create multiple fake accounts to, and this is a direct quote, pretend to be vegans who had bad health outcomes.
The ex-vegan story.
The ex-vegan story. It's the most powerful psychological tool they have because it's not about data or science anymore. It's about fear. It's an emotional, personal story of regret.
So what kind of stories were they making up?
The OP called them doozies. Just completely fabricated, wild health disasters. They'd create a brand new account, post this long emotional story about how going vegan gave them some terrible illness. And then, this is the key part, they'd say, my account is new to keep the cult from knowing I'm saying this.
Wow, so they create the idea of a vegan cult that silences dissent, all while being a paid plant themselves. That's next level.
It's designed to break trust within the community from the inside out. The OP even shared an example. A guy in the cubicle next to him posted a story claiming that going vegan caused him to develop obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD.
He blamed veganism for OCD.
Yes, and the OP said a bunch of people on one sub believed it. They're taking a serious mental health condition and just weaponizing it to make a diet seem dangerous.
That's truly awful, and I'm guessing these posts didn't just sit there.
Oh no, they were amplified. The OP described it as a cubicle farm. If one person posted a big story, they'd have 10 guys in the cubicle farm start responding to you so your posts go to the top.
So it creates this instant illusion of agreement, that this fake story is being validated by a dozen other people who are all, in reality, coworkers.
Exactly, and the scale of this is just staggering. The OP estimated that on certain subreddits about this topic, roughly half the accounts are not genuine.
Half. So if you're someone who is just curious, just trying to learn, you have a 50-50 chance of interacting with a paid troll whose only job is to scare you away.
That's the reality they've created. And it wasn't just health myths. The other half of their job was targeting activism itself.
How so?
They would create these extremist vegan personas. They'd jump into threads and be purposefully aggressive, unreasonable, just completely over the top.
The classic strategy. Don't argue with the reasonable person. Amplify the most extreme voice you can find and then use them to paint the entire movement as crazy.
It's character assassination by association. And they had specific targets. The OP confirmed that major organizations like PETA were a priority. They said the industry had funded some attacks on them at one point. It's a top-down strategy to delegitimize the most visible voices.
So this whistleblower, they did this for a year. What made them finally speak out? They signed an NDA.
Guilt. They said they felt intense guilt, and that's what led them to do the anonymous AMA. But what's really fascinating is they also said that even after all this, they still ate meat.
Wow, so even seeing the dirty tricks up close didn't change their own habits, but they still felt compelled to expose the deception.
It just shows you how powerful habit is. But the most important thing, their final message wasn't even just about veganism. It was be skeptical of everything online and consider sources. The problem's so much bigger than just a diet debate.
It's a terrifying picture, a whole infrastructure of low-wage workers manufacturing doubt, but they're just the foot soldiers. Let's move the chain of command, because this is where the big money comes in.
Right. If the troll farms are the disposable infantry, the PR firms and the funded academics are the generals. They're the ones mapping out the whole war.
And a key example here is the PR firm Red Flag. Our sources say they've worked for the Mead Institute since 2015. They seem to be the architects of some of the biggest campaigns.
They are. And their biggest target in recent years was the 2019 Eat Lancet report. And we need to be clear, this wasn't some random blog post. This was a massive peer-reviewed study by 37 leading scientists from around the world.
I remember that report. The goal was basically to figure out how to feed 10 billion people by 2050 without completely destroying the planet, right?
Exactly. And its main conclusion, at least for wealthy nations, was pretty stark. We need to cut red meat consumption by about 50%.
And I'm guessing the industry didn't love that.
They did not. And their response, orchestrated by Red Flag, was immediate and vicious. Their goal wasn't to argue the science. It was to frame the report and its authors as radical, out of touch, and of course, hypocritical.
So personal attacks, not data.
Classic deflection. The sources show how they did it. They briefed journalists. They fed talking points to think tanks. They coordinated with social media influencers. They also ran a huge paid ad campaign for the Animal Agriculture Alliance that reached almost 800,000 people.
And did it work?
It was devastatingly effective. It led to over 500 negative articles being published worldwide. The backlash was so intense that the World Health Organization, the WHO, actually pulled out of a planned launch event.
The WHO pulled out. That's a huge deal.
It is. And the authors of the study, the scientists, they were just bombarded with nasty comments. They experienced burnout. Some of them just completely withdrew from promoting their own research. The PR firm basically bullied them into silence.
So the goal is to make any other scientists think twice before publishing something that the meat industry won't like.
That's the chilling effect. And Red Flag internally called the campaign a remarkable success. They succeeded in muddying the waters and waging a culture war against the science itself.
And this isn't just happening in the media, it's happening in academia, too.
Yes, this is the other side of the coin. If PR firms handle the public perception, academic funding provides the intellectual cover. The industry strategically funds university centers to produce research that, surprise, surprise, is favorable to their products.
So give us an example.
A major one is the Clear Center at UC Davis. The sources confirm it received nearly $5.5 million from industry groups. We're talking the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, subsidiaries of JBS, the world's biggest meat company.
$5.5 million, that's not a small grant.
No, that is an enormous amount of money. And when a research center is that dependent on one industry for its funding, it creates, let's say, a powerful incentive.
And what did the Clear Center do with that incentive?
They actively worked to undermine that same Eat Lancet report. They even coordinated a #Yes2Meat social media campaign against it. The center's director has been a major voice pushing the highly contested idea that meat and dairy can be climate neutral.
The ultimate greenwashing. So they use the credibility of a university to launder industry talking points into what looks like legitimate science.
That's the whole point. It creates doubt. It validates denial. And then that academic misinformation gets blasted out in huge ad campaigns.
Like the full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal.
Exactly. Paid for by the Beef Checkoff program. And we should probably clarify what that is.
Right. It's not just a private company's ad budget.
No, the Beef Checkoff is a government-managed tax on all cattle producers in the U.S. It generates tens of millions of dollars every year specifically to promote and increase beef consumption. It's the entire industry's war chest.
And what was the claim in that big, expensive ad?
The claim was that eliminating beef is not a realistic or impactful solution for climate change. They said if everyone stopped eating beef, global greenhouse gas emissions would only drop by between 0.36 and 2%.
2%, that sounds tiny, but it's also completely wrong, isn't it?
It is a classic case of cherry-picking data. It directly contradicts the figures from major international bodies like the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO.
So what's the real number? How can they say 2% when the FAO says something so different?
The industry's 2% figure is looking at an incredibly narrow slice of the pie. It's probably just direct emissions from the animals themselves on the farm. But the FAO's number, which is 14.5% of all human-caused emissions, looks at the entire supply chain.
Okay, so what is the industry leaving out of their 2% number?
They're leaving out the biggest parts. They leave out the emissions from producing all the feed, the fertilizers, the pesticides, the tractors, and most importantly, they leave out land use change.
Deforestation.
Deforestation. The millions of acres of forest, especially in the Amazon, that are cleared to create pasture for cattle or to grow soy to feed those cattle. That releases massive amounts of carbon. The FAO says cattle alone are responsible for 65% of the whole livestock sector's emissions, mainly because of these factors.
So the difference between 2% and 14.5% is basically the difference between propaganda and the full scientific picture.
It is. The reality is, studies show that switching to a plant-based diet can cut your personal food-related emissions by up to 50%. That's the number they don't want you to hear.
Did you know we have a vegan search engine, a vegan forum, a vegan newsletter, and so much more coming soon? So why not check us out at Caavakushi.com.
And while they're running these ads for adults, they're also targeting kids.
Constantly. They have free educational materials in schools all across the U.S. and Canada. The #UndeniablyDairy campaign is paying TikTok influencers in countries where dairy isn't traditionally a big part of the diet.
And we saw it in the UK during Veganuary. The industry launched a massive ad campaign aimed directly at Gen Z, right at the moment they might be curious about trying veganism.
It's a full spectrum strategy.
Yeah.
Trolls online, PR firms in the media, academics in the universities, and influencers on social media. They've got every angle covered.
So now that we see the machine, let's look at what it actually produces. The specific lies, the toolkit.
Yes, let's break down the main narratives they push, starting with health.
Right, the Frankenfood scare.
It's their #1 defensive tactic. Attack plant-based alternatives as unhealthy, unnatural, and ultra-processed. It works because people are genuinely anxious about processed foods, and they exploit that anxiety.
And this gets into what you called chemophobia, the fear of ingredients with long names.
Exactly. The whistleblower gave a perfect example. Their tactic was to find an ingredient with a complicated-sounding name, like methylcellulose, and just, in their words, scare people to death with it.
Okay, so what even is methylcellulose? It sounds pretty chemical-y.
It's just a plant fiber. It's derived from plants, and it's used as a totally harmless binder to give things like veggie burgers their texture. It's in tons of things, from bread to chocolate. But the name sounds scary.
And they lean into that.
They lean in hard. There was a commercial where a kid fails to spell methylcellulose in a spelling bee, and the voiceover says, if you can't spell it or pronounce it, maybe you shouldn't be eating it. It's pure emotional manipulation.
So they attack plant foods as fake, while at the same time promoting these, frankly, extreme meat diets.
It's a brilliant pincer move. The whistleblower called the carnivore diet a total PR stunt. They said, influencers are paid boatloads of money to push all meat diets and things like bone broth.
So you demonize veganism on one side, promote this other extreme on the other, and suddenly the standard American diet, full of meat, looks like the sensible middle ground.
That's the strategy.
Yeah.
And they don't just attack the processed stuff. They go after whole foods, too. They push what the OP called the plants are poison rhetoric.
Like eating fruit is the same as drinking soda.
That one. All the fear-mongering about sugar spikes from a banana or demonizing all carbs. They're trying to undermine the very foundation of a healthy, plant-rich diet.
And they're already attacking the next generation of products, like cultivated meat.
Oh, yeah. The trolls were making up lies that lab-grown meat is made of cancer cells. They just attach the scariest word they can think of, cancer, to a new technology to create instant fear and rejection.
Okay, so let's shift to their environmental playbook.
Here, the goal is twofold. First, minimize their own impact, like we saw with the 2% lie. Second, try to make plant agriculture seem just as bad, if not worse.
This is where the crop deaths argument comes in.
The crop deaths fallacy, yes. This is where they wildly exaggerate the number of small animals, like mice and birds, that are killed during crop harvesting to argue that veganism is actually more harmful to animals.
And the whistleblower said this one works really well.
It does. Their strategy was to embellish the heck out of that because, and this is the key, most people don't think, oh wait, more crops are grown so we can feed animals.
That's the blind spot they exploit. People forget that something like 77% of all agricultural land on Earth is used for livestock, either for grazing or growing their feed.
So the ultimate way to reduce crop deaths is to stop growing trillions of calories of corn and soy just to funnel them through animals. But they never mentioned that part.
And while they're deflecting with that, they're also just denying the bigger problem.
Right. An analysis of pro-meat posts found only 4% of them even tried to greenwash meat and, claim it was good for the environment. A much larger portion, 7%, was just dedicated to outright climate change denial.
So the strategy is either claim your cows are carbon neutral or just say that climate change is a hoax anyway.
Whatever works for the audience. And all of it, every single claim, relies on the fact that, as the whistleblower put it, it is rare for anyone to check sources. They know people will just see the headline and move on.
Which brings us to the final part of the toolkit, the culture wars.
This is where they stop talking about food and start talking about identity. A key part of this is the big vegan myth.
The idea that there's this massively powerful, wealthy vegan lobby controlling everything.
Exactly. It's a way to punch up to make themselves look like the underdog fighting against a powerful threat. But when the whistleblower was asked about the financial power of big vegan, they just laughed. They said the plant-based industry has a tiny fraction of the money the meat industry has. It's a complete reversal of reality.
And then there's the masculinity angle.
Oh, a huge one. They work overtime to associate meat with strength, power, fertility, traditional masculinity. And at the same time, they attack vegan men with terms like soy boy.
Which is based on those totally debunked myths about phytoestrogens in soy?
Totally debunked, but still very effective. It makes going vegan feel like a loss of identity for some men, like they're betraying some kind of cultural code. It's a powerful tool to keep people locked in.
And finally, they just lean into the stereotypes.
The rude vegan stereotype.
Yeah.
The trolls confirmed they were paid to reinforce this, to go into threads and act rude and judgmental.
Why do that?
Because if you believe the entire community is hostile and unwelcoming, you're never going to join it, no matter how good the arguments are.
Yeah.
It's about making the social cost of entry seem too high. They build a firewall of negativity around the whole idea.
Wow. So when you put it all together, the health scares, the environmental red herrings, the culture war attacks, it's a pretty comprehensive machine.
It's designed to overwhelm the simple truth with noise, fear, and complexity.
So After all this, what does it all really mean? What's the big takeaway from these sources?
It means that the industrial meat industry sees compassionate living not just as competition, but as an existential threat to its entire business model.
And the amount of money and effort they're putting into this disinformation war is the proof. Millions to PR firms, millions to friendly academics, and then paying people by the hour to create fake stories online.
And it's all in service of protecting a system that we know factually requires harming sentient beings and has a devastating impact on the planet. The core truth of veganism is so simple and powerful that they have to spend a fortune on lies to try and fight it.
That simplicity really is the key, isn't it? When you cut through all the noise they create, the basic idea is just don't hurt animals if you don't have to.
And that's what makes this whole disinformation war so revealing. It shows that when a compassionate choice starts to threaten profits, the system will deploy every manipulative tactic in the book. As a listener, as a consumer, you just have to learn to recognize the red flags, the fake stories, the cherry-picked data, the culture war bait, and always ask who benefits from the claim you're reading.
We've seen that people earning $17 an hour were paid to invent fake health crises. At the same time, multi-million-dollar PR firms were attacking legitimate, peer-reviewed science. If the truth was really on the side of industrial agriculture, why would they need any of that? Why spend all that money on secrecy and lies?
And that's the final thought we want to leave you with. What does it tell you about the inherent strength of the simple, straightforward truth of plant-based living, that it requires such a massive, expensive, and coordinated campaign of deception to even try and slow it down? The size of their propaganda machine is maybe the best evidence we have for the power of the idea they're so desperately trying to suppress.
Thanks for listening. We hope you liked this episode. If you did, we'd really appreciate it if you could give us 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. Also, we would be so appreciative if you could just share this episode or this podcast with all your friends and family who are vegans or vegan friendly. We're also really excited because we are going to be launching something really cool pretty soon on the site, so keep an eye out for that. And we will see you really soon with a new episode.